Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on episode 5 of Mob Psycho 100. I'll be honest, I recorded episode 4 before I went on holiday break, and so I've been actually gone like a week and a half from watching Mob Psycho, so it's been a while, but I've not been complaining because even though we ended kind of on a cliffhanger, I've been dreading this episode. I've been really dreading this episode because I was like, I don't want our boy Mob to suffer. And last episode, he suffered. It's like, why, Mob Psycho? Like, Reagan looks like he's down for the count. Dimple is seemingly out of commission. Mob is being thrust into this, like, mind trip where he thinks he doesn't have powers and this psychic is playing with him in his head. I don't like it. And I was like, dang it, no. So I'm going to a Christmas event later today. It's not near Christmas yet, but I'm going. If you're in the US, once Thanksgiving is over, it's like everything becomes Christmas and you can't avoid it. So even if you don't celebrate it, it's like holiday themed everywhere. And so I'm going to an event later today. So that's why I'm wearing this ugly Christmas sweater. And I was like, you know what? Maybe this sweater will give me good vibes and help me get through this episode. I don't know. I don't know. We've got a little bit with Reagan Thirst Update, but it's, and they're all cozy, comfy images. So maybe that'll help too. The only comment that I have going into this episode is D. Chin talked about how on AO3, I think in the last couple episodes I've been talking about like Chainsaw Man and getting that mixed up in it, and they were saying that there's been a lot of Chainsaw Man and Mob Psycho crossovers, which is interesting. And all I'll say without spoiling anything about Chainsaw Man is that the main character's name is Dingy. And there apparently in a lot of the crossovers, Reagan has been Dingy's mentor. And I was like, that would be amazing. I would read the hell out of that. I want to see Reagan in the Chainsaw Man world. That'd be so bizarre. Without spoiling anything, in the Chainsaw Man world, they say you got to be a little crazy. Reagan would fit. I'm just saying, Reagan would fit. And not that he's crazy, but his methods, he'd fit right in. I really need this in my life. Unfortunately, I'm avoiding spoilers for Chainsaw Man, so I won't be able to read any of those anytime soon. And I'm avoiding Mob Psycho spoilers. So, gonna be a while before I can read those, but I'm going to eventually. So with the Reagan Thirst Update, I do have a couple things I want to show y'all that's been shared in the Discord. There's a couple pieces here about Teru and Mob. I've missed Teru. I really wish Teru and Ritsu would come in and save our boy, but I think Mob's got to work through this on his own, and Reagan's back there, but I don't think we're going to see Teru or Ritsu at least until we're halfway. I feel like with this first part of the season, the first half is really going to be about Reagan and Mob setting up we know what his issues are and setting up some things. And then I don't feel like Teru and Ritsu are going to come in until the latter half, which is so bizarre, right? Because Teru and Ritsu were like the focal points of season 1. And so far this is, we're nearing the halfway point and they've not even shown up yet. So it's kind of bizarre, right? But I do love this artwork of Teru and Mob. What I like about it is that Mob always seems to have like this black and white motif. He's got like the black striped shirt and the black jacket. Teru always has the most pastel, crazy color scheme going on. And he can pull off the gaudiest things. Like that sweater with the hearts and the frills. He pulls it off. It's great. So I actually really love that picture of Teru and Mob. It's great. But you know what I love even more? This one. Look at that jam. Haichi over on Twitter shows them all aged up. And again, you have Mob with the neutral black colors and everything, looking amazing as an adult with the watch. But Teru, that belt, that jacket, those necklaces with the red shirt, the crossover chain, how our boy Teru pulls off fashion like this, I will never know. But I love, of course he has the arm around Mob, right? Of course. But I freaking love their expressions. I love their artwork. I love everything about this piece. I'm like, I want a whole series dedicated to adult Mob and adult Teru going on psychic adventures with some BL stuff thrown in. I was like, that's all I want. That's all I need. But this would not be the Reagan Thirst Update without Reagan. But I'll go ahead and say 2 out of 3 of these are not thirsty updates on Reagan. They are wholesome, sweet images that we need to get through this episode. One being this really, really cute one of Mob with the little mustache made out of whipped cream. And he's like, and Reagan's like, oh, are you sure you're my student? And he's like, no, I'm a real man, sir. And then Reagan puts on the little mustache. He's like, I'm a real man too. And he's like, congrats. freaking precious. So precious. And then, speaking of which, this one of Reagan helping like little baby Mob, I love it. And the tagline there, when you've got a kid by your side, you do everything much gentler. I live for Reagan being like a softie around Mob because he's trying to be an adult. It's like all of my love. I need Reagan to help him, but Mob's got to figure this one out by himself, it looks like. And then we had to have a little thirst in the Reagan thirst update. I know it's not Wednesday, but this one just killed me where it's like, sparkle on, it's Wednesday, don't forget to be yourself. I love it. I absolutely love it. And Reagan with the rainbows and the sparkles and the metallic colors. Our boy Reagan don't care what you think about him, and I freaking love it. So that's the Reagan thirst update. I'm really dreading this episode because I don't like sad things happening to our boy Mob. But maybe he'll be all right. He's got to get out of this somehow, right? We have a whole nother season and a half to get through, so he has to get out of it somehow. It's just, I want him to be okay. So we'll find out, though, won't we? We're going to start episode 5 of Mob Psycho season 2, and we're going to do that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. Every week, it's like, well, you know, it's Mob Psycho, so you come to have this standard, right, that you expect from week to week every episode, and you're like, well, the animation's gonna be good. What was this episode? We're not even halfway through the season yet. We're not even halfway through season 2, and that felt like the finale of season 1 is what that felt like. Honestly, this episode 4 and 5, it felt like the same heaviness and the same thematic overtones and the same like hype and animation and quality that was in episodes 10, 11, and 12 of last season, and we're not even to the halfway point. But yeah, God, this episode, just this episode was so hard to watch for like a good half of it. I was just sitting there going, leave Mob alone. I felt so bad for him, and it's those moments like that that make the rewards of seeing Mob like go full on shonen handsome protagonist in the last third like just really hit hard, right? But there's so much like the problems are not solved. The problems are not solved in this episode. No, there's been a lot revealed in this episode that I feel like is gonna be touched on the rest of this season and probably the rest of this series, to be honest. There's lots of things. I'm glad that Mob has come to some conclusions about himself and about the world around him, but at the same time, there's still things that Mob is gonna have to deal with and has been dealing with. That's probably a good thing. I want to bring Whiteboard Coon out because there are some things, let's talk about this, that Mob's been dealing with this entire series and that Mogami brings up as being, you know, these big traumatic things. And and then Reagan and then Dimple, and then Asagiri, what I love is that Mob has like this harem of girls he's met one time. Like one night stand harems. He's met these girls for one episode, with the exception of Tsubomi and Take. With the exception of those two girls, and well, I guess Misato's included with that, but then now he's added Asagiri, he has Emi, he's like, half these girls he's met one time, and he's left such an impact on them that they're all forming a harem. Like, by the time season 3 is over, Terry's gonna have to beat him off with a stick. So, God, where do we even start? I was flabbergasted by this episode. Completely floored. Like, we're only on episode 5. Maybe it's like Isayama and it's the rule of 5. Isayama, who does Attack on Titan, in that series, it's not the rule of 8, it's the rule of 5. Which, although Mob Psycho did live up to the hype on episode 8, so I don't even know where to go. It's crazy. So I think that, where do we go to from here? So it's like, with Mob, it's like things he has realized. Okay. And then that's in the world around him, right? And then goals of where he's at. and things that are still unknown. I think there's still like some unknown stuff that we need to like touch base on, right? Okay. And yeah, I wanted to yell at Mogami this whole time, being like, yeah, the world can be shitty, but that's not everyone's experience. And just because you had a bad experience growing up doesn't mean that's going to be the same for everyone else. And just because things didn't work out for you, unfortunately, that's kind of the unfortunate thing about life. It's not fair. It isn't. There are some things that some people won't have access to. There are some things that others do have access to more easily. It sucks, but that's just the way things are. So it's like, and you can do things like what Mob realizes is that, one, people can change. That's a big thing here, is that people can change. And he sees that from both ends of the spectrum, right? And the thing about it is that you have people like Mogami who went from, you know, having these good intentions to worse, right? You have people like that. And then you have people like Teru, for example, who changed for the better. So yeah, so I it's funny Teru's not been mentioned in this series yet, right? Teru in this season hasn't really showed up at all. He's off training the other psychics to prepare for Claw. So, but we haven't touched base on Teru. But last season, was it around this time? It might have been around episodes 4 and 5 of last season, actually, when he confronted Teru. Yeah, it was. Holy cow, yeah. This thing was brought up last season. But there's these ideas that last season, Teru and Mogami started off on polar opposite ends. Teru was like, I'm special. I'm going to use my powers for myself. And then Mob showed him, like, that's not right. And it caused Teru to change. And that change in Teru has been for the better. Then you have Mogami, who's the polar opposite, who is like, thought he was going to save everybody with his powers. And then the world just shunned him back. And he found out that, I guess we'll put Mogami over here, because Mogami has a lot of points that he wants to bring up. Mogami is kind of like the president, the chairman with Ritsu that was like, had a really awful life growing up, and he just wants to project it on everybody else. It's like, dude, you can't do that. So there's unknown factors. I also want to do like some thematic things here that I think are really cool in this episode, that looking back on it, like I've got the episode pulled up here, and it's the moth, right? I think it was really cool that Mogami, he is represented in the entire episode, because he can't be there for Mob while he experiences this world. He's represented by insects, which kind of gives you an idea possibly of his own perspective of how he views himself. He views himself as an insect, like an ant, like somebody that's easily crushed. Like, he still has insecurities, even as an evil spirit. Even after he's died, he still has insecurities, and he keeps on having regrets and thinking about the past, which helps explain why he's a ghost. He has regrets of the past, so he has unfinished business, right, that he can't come to terms with. But he's represented by an insect, which is crazy, because it could have been a squirrel, could have been a cat, it could have been that cat that Mob was giving milk to, it could have been a dog, could have been another animal if he didn't want to be represented by a physical human form, but he chose an insect. And I think that reflects his own insecurities that he still has from his mortal life into this afterlife that he's living. So I think that's really interesting. And you come back to that image, like in the very first panel of the very first shot of this episode, you see the moth. And the moth its wings aren't moving. It's just sitting on the branch, and you think, oh, cool, there's a moth. I mean, its wings flap once when the episode starts, right? But then you come to find out the idea of the insect, the moth, being eaten and taken over by ants. Like later on, you get that shot in a moth, the big, beautiful moth that could fly away, that has the capabilities, for whatever reason, has been suspended on this branch, and the ants are slowly devouring and eating it. And that's kind of a representation of, to Mogami, he's this moth. And him and Mob are like these psychics that have powers. They're bigger than the ants. They're bigger and better than the ants. But the ants gang up on them because there's more of them, and overcome and crush them. And that's such a cool visual representation, right, of where Mogami's state is and what he thinks of all this. It's fascinating. But yeah, so he's basically going to try to show Mob just how cruel the world can be. And I do think I do think it's important Mob understands that he realizes, we'll leave a little space there, but he realizes that the world it can be cruel. And there's a thing with that too, that Mob's kind of known that all along, or he's been experiencing it, even if he hasn't been recognizing it, because I mean, back in episode 3, those kids were like trying to bully him at school, and Ritsu and the Body Improvement Club showed up to be like to defend him. And there's been other people like try to bully him. Also in episode 3, those ones that like hired Reagan to like go on the ghost hunting, they were giving Mob a hard time. Like people can be really cruel, right? They can be mean. And this whole time, like the Body Improvement Club and Ritsu and them, and Dimple as well. Dimple kind of says that too in this episode. He's like, you can take these guys. Like, he's like, what if you don't have to use your psychic powers to get back at them? He's like, Mob, they want Mob to defend himself. But it doesn't have to be through psychic powers. Like when Dimple's like, you went to the Body Improvement Club, show off your muscles. And then he does like the fake, like he makes his body bigger, and Dimple's like, okay, tone it down. I know this is a dream world. But yeah, they want Mob to be able to defend himself. They're like, don't let, because yeah, they're saying like, don't, let me get this right on here. They're like, don't let others step over you. Which is kind of what Mogami says over here, but he says that if you don't use your powers, then others will use you. Which is kind of, Mob's been having some conflicting messages with his powers in terms of that, which would explain why it would be very confusing, because Mob's been told by Reagan not to use his powers against other people because he could really hurt them, and then he will end up suffering. That will be very bad. And that kind of is proven by Mogami. Mogami says that his mother's illness that they couldn't diagnose was a plague that his own powers influenced. Right? So Reagan has said from the start in season 1, he's like, you'll be the one that suffers if you use your powers against others. Right? And so Mob has been trying not to do that. And Mogami, because he uses powers to kill others, all this negative like emotion and spirituality kind of stuck to him and ended up attacking his mom. So he did end up suffering because he was using his powers negatively against others. But there's a really fine line, because it's like, okay, don't use your powers to hurt others, but you need to be in control enough that if you need to put up a barrier and defend yourself, that you can. Or don't use your powers, but find another way to defend yourself, either through your words, through your muscles, through being able to run away, through your intelligence. They're like, find a way to defend yourself. Don't just be a slab that gets beat up for no reason. He's like, find a way to defend yourself and find your footing. It doesn't have to be through your psychic powers, but you need to find a way to keep yourself safe without hurting others. And that's a big, I think that's a goal that this series with Mob is going to work on, like how to stand up to others without physically hurting them. That seems like a pretty big goal. And he kind of does it in episode 1. He stands up to the girls when they're attacking Emmy and uses his words and his emotions to defend her, and then she kind of changes because of that, and she ends up like backing him up. So people can change. Like Emmy's proof of it, right? Now I left a little spot here because I want to say that at the same time where people can or can't change, also sometimes change doesn't mean like big alterations. It's not a big change, right? Like at the very end, Asagiri, Mob's like, are you really like this? And she's like, yeah. And she does change a little bit, but it's not like a life-altering, total reversal, they're completely a different person sort of change. It's like little changes, right? Something small that seems insignificant, but maybe has like a big ramification down the road, right? Which I think it will because of the dad. I think that the dad, by the end of this, I think that the dad is going to give money to the psycho helmet religion. which is kind of crazy. We'll go back through there and double check it, but I'm pretty sure he's going to give a bunch of money to them. I'm like, what the hell? But yeah, this first part here, where everybody, it just seems like everything that Mob is experiencing are stuff that Mogami experiences. Like, he says that the world is cruel and everybody's mean to him, but that's not true, right? So to Mogami, he was bullied as a kid. He was bullied as a kid and had no friends. But we know, and Mob's memories have been tampered with, so he doesn't remember, but we know Mob does have friends. And when the world kind of explodes and goes back to color instead of being this, I love in this episode, everything's like muted grays and dark colors and neutral colors. And then the line work and everything is kind of like sketchy. It's a little off from how it normally is, but it's a dream world and it's kind of distorted. I love it. But when it all gets like Pleasantville color again, I love that Mob sees Teru and Ritsu in the Body Improvement Club. Like, Mob has friends. He has friends. And he's gained friends from who he is naturally. And that's just the way it is. And it sucks for Mogami. It sucks that his life was that bad. It really is. It's awful that he grew up in that situation and forced himself to, and just came to think that way and felt like there was no way out. It's awful and it's tragic. But it sucks when he tries to, like, impose it on Mob, who is not the same as him. It's like, no, Mob does have friends. He did have a very different upbringing. His family is much different than Mogami. So I'm like, it sucks that Mogami went through that, but it's not cool to try to like impose your upbringing onto somebody else. Like that, it's never the same thing. Everybody's are so individualistic, right? And then we cut to that moth being taken over by the ants. Yeah, without his powers. Also, want to make note, like the teacher slapping him. Again, I feel like that's a very Mogami era thing. Like the teacher slapping him. I'm sorry, but that would not happen in the 21st century. It just isn't. As a teacher, I'm like, well, you don't touch anybody as a teacher. That's, at least in the US, you don't touch a single soul. And I don't know any other anime that's modern that has a teacher that would slap a student. I don't think that's a thing. Now, back in the 70s and 80s, yeah, my parents' era, yeah, no, you could have some physical altercations happen from a teacher to you still then, yeah, but now in the current timeline, So yeah, that's definitely Mogami projecting onto Mob his own experience and how the students, and again, it's what's so cool is that he's represented by an insect, and so every single time we see like a little cut to the insect and Mogami has his voiceover, I didn't catch that until Dimple smashed the caterpillar. I was like, oh, the insect's been him the whole time. That's really cool. Like you see the spider in the classroom. It's really neat. So then, yeah, we go back to these two bullies on the bridge that are like beating up on Mob, and he looks over onto the bridge to see like his brother walking home from school. And the thing that you know this is a dream is that Ritsu looks down on him but keeps going. And it's that visual representation that Mob has of Ritsu being like higher up than him as his little brother. But I'm like, I was getting so pissed off in the episode because I'm like, no, that's not accurate. Ritsu would never do that. And Mogami is trying to project this world onto Mob that is not an accurate reflection of reality. It's like, no, he has a supportive brother. He has friends. It's like Mogami's just kind of jealous of that. And he's like, it looks like you refrained from using your powers in your personal life. And of course there's the praying mantis like on the backpack, and it's Mogami. It's like, I guess you're trying to become a better person by focusing on developing your social skills rather than your powers. And he's like, but only the fortunate in life would even have that idea. And of course, that would make sense that it's Mogami. That's the way that he says. He says, it shows how lightly you take the real world. And the moment that Mob's like, if only I were stronger, I was like, no. I was like, please. I was like, please don't, Mob. You're actually a lot more better off than you think. Stop. And so there's this question, though, of becoming stronger. And we'll go back to it later on in this episode. Becoming stronger and what that means, right? We have that. And when he goes back to the board, there's some words on the backside that say nature, dream, friendship, and darkness. But yeah, the milk and everything, like, she's bullying you in order to secure her place in society. And it's something she's done routinely. Yeah. And so, which is kind of, that does happen. People bully themselves to like get a status, right? But the moment that this whole episode, that everything changes to be like distorted with the milk and everything, oh my God, it's crazy. Picture that. Where he's like, if you don't become stronger, you'll be used, exploited, and forever a stepping stone for others. And that's kind of like what Mogami's been thinking, right? So meanwhile, we cut back to Dimple and Reagan, and Dimple's like, yep, he's been in there too long, something's going down. So I like that Dimple, we're going to talk about Dimple and Reagan. I like Dimple's like, nope, it's been too long, we need to save this boy, he's probably in trouble, let's do something. And Reagan's like, it hasn't even been 30 minutes yet. And he's like, that's too long. He's like, you should have been done in a minute. I love in the animation, anytime Dimple possesses someone, even if it's Mob, the facial expressions and everything, they mirror Dimple so perfectly, and you instantly know it's him, even if it was without the red dimples. It's cute. And he's like, if this keeps up, his sense of self will fall apart. Dimple's like, I know how this song and dance goes. Mogami's trying to break down his spirit and take him over completely. We've got to save him or he's just going to fall apart, right? So Dimple seems pretty versed in all of this. Like he knows how this works, right? He's going to die. And Reagan doesn't seem concerned. He's like, Mob's someone who can solve things on his own. So Reagan, he has faith in Mob. He says Mob can solve things on his own. Now, I think Reagan is a little bit, I think Reagan gives Mob a little bit more benefit of the doubt, because by the end of this, Mob looked like he was about to turn to the dark side if Dimple hadn't shown up. I think Reagan maybe has a little bit rose-colored glasses when it comes to Mob. Like he puts Mob on a pedestal. And he's like, oh, Mob can figure this out. And I love Reagan for it. I love Reagan's optimism and him being a mentor and having like amazing sage advice for our boy Mob. But then on the other hand, I'm like, Reagan, I think Reagan doesn't see sometimes how seriously things are affecting Mob. And Dimple is a great balance, because Dimple is such a worrywart, and Dimple's like, nope, he's gonna die, and Reagan's like, he's got this. And so they kind of balance each other out, where Dimple can be like, okay, I'm gonna go save him, you keep giving the inspirational, motivational talks, okay? And Dimple's like, he's like, he actually has strength, unlike me. So this thing right here, right? Okay, so Reagan, what are you doing? He has strength, unlike me. That like crushed me, because Reagan's like, I'm not strong. I'm like, Reagan, would you just I just like crushed my heart into tiny pieces, right? It just, and then, yeah, Dimple's like, quit being naive. Like, quit saying this. He's like, we're all finished if this guy wakes up. And so, meanwhile, 6 months have passed in this world, and you just see, it's like the president of the chairman of the council, the student council, where Mob is like stuck in his room. His bed's in array, his dirty clothes are in a heap, everything's tossed to the floor, it all looks awful, and there's this red light glowing with the little moths that are Mogami. All the negative emotions are collectively welling up within you. It's only natural after living in this world for 6 months without your powers. Ugh. You mustn't misuse your powers. I could see spirit. And so he like talks about his own spirits. So yeah, so I like that it's the saga building, and there's like all different things there. And so we get a little bit about Mogami's backstory, that he took the job killing people to save his mom. And God, that moment we see him like, and his spirit, I even gave up sleep to earn as much as I could. And we see his body is totally distorted. Nope. That's the freakiest thing. Like just seeing how messed up he is. And then he just got to the point where he devoted his entire life to trying to save his mom, and it completely wrecked him. And his room is just like that. And he says, but my mother still died. And then he found out that my own actions brought evil that ended up plaguing her. So you would think. So at this point, I was like, okay, so Mogami realized the errors of his ways. He realized that by killing people and using his powers negatively, shouldn't have done that, because it ended up bringing him misfortune. Right? no, that's not what he realizes at all. And Mob doesn't seem to get it either. He says, no, I should have doubted my way of life and how I was being used by others. And I'm like, no, you weren't being used by others. You made the decision to kill people. No. I was like, Mogami, you completely missed the mark, right? All he took from his mother's dying and from apparently it being his fault was that he should have used his powers only for himself. He says that he started out like Mob and he was using his powers for good and helping others. And then once his mom got sick, he started using his powers for her. But I'm like, the way that he used his powers for her was by killing people, which was his own decision. So he didn't have to do that. He didn't have to. I'm sure he could have found a job like at a lumber company using his psychic powers to move things where he didn't have to kill people. But all he took away from it in the end was, oh, well, I shouldn't ever have helped anybody to start with. I should have just I should have been Teru. I should have stuck by myself and used my powers only for myself and not helped anyone. But even Teru helped the like gangs and stuff. So Teru's not even completely like Mogami to begin with. But then we see that Mogami hung himself to become a vengeful spirit. I became an evil spirit and decided to use my powers for myself this time. And the moment you tell a protagonist that you became an evil spirit, that should be a cause that should be cause for concern that you also shouldn't listen to them. Yeah. I was gonna change the world. Like, it just, and that image. What I like about this episode too is that all of the moments where it is Mob and Mogami, the ratio of the screen, like when you see the actual episode, the screen is like a big 16:9 thing, but when you get into like the world of Mogami and that he's made for him and Mob, it's narrower. Like the screen narrows. So it's almost like tunnel vision. Like he's trying to give Mob tunnel vision, that this is the only way you can live from now on. And it's like, no, it's not. And it's just, oh my God. What do we do? But yeah, I began to punish those who brought misfortune to others. And we get a string of different things. We see like from there on, we see a religious leader supposedly, or someone that's like at a press conference. We see somebody with a knife. We see somebody like doing some kind of like laundering. We see like a prostitute. We see somebody like on the internet. We see somebody like in a war, people being hung. Yeah. And if I dwelt within that girl, I could punish these self-proclaimed psychics as well. This is how I chose to use my powers. Yeah, if you are allowed to use your powers for yourself. So here's the thing. Yeah, there is some truth to what Mogami tells him, that you can use your powers for yourself. Of course he can. Yeah, he can use his powers for himself, but that doesn't mean he has to use them to harm others or to like be a vengeful spirit or a sympathizer of your cause, Mogami. It's like, no, he can use his life is his own, right? It's like in the OP, your life is your own. You choose to do what you want to, but that doesn't mean he has to follow you. Just because he said you should be using your powers for yourself. And he's like, you understand that now, don't you? And so, yeah, and I'm sure that Mob is getting that across, that he's figuring out that he can use his powers. But then the next image we get that gave me some hope, because I was getting a little worried for Mob there, because he realizes that he can use his powers for himself. And I was getting a little worried. I was like, Mob, do not succumb to the dark side. But then the next image we get is him giving the cat milk. So even after all this, even after 6 months of enduring this hell, he still wants to like rescue a cat, right? And then the Asagiri girl shows up to like tell him what a crappy thing to do. She's like, it's feeding strays the public disservice. And Mob's just like, what? And she's like, what are you going to do about that cat? Are you going to take it in? And he's like, oh, nothing. And she says, really? Well, that poor cat, like, the cat's probably better off dying. I just read something for this channel that involved a dying cat, and we cut to this. I was like, are you freaking kidding me? Like, just no dead cats. and she says, I'll go take it to a shelter. And Mob says, no, I'll take it in. I'll take care of it. So the one girl, Asagiri, she tries to tell him, like, if you start to help someone, then it's your responsibility, is what she's saying. She's like, well, you can't just start feeding this stray. It's gonna eat once and then it's gonna expect more food. Are you gonna be able to take it in? And Mob says that he will, but it's like, you can be kind. It's what she's suggesting is that if you start helping somebody, it's gonna be your responsibility. And that's not all true. If you help at a homeless shelter one weekend, you are not obligated to help every weekend for the rest of your life. Every little bit counts. Not everyone is capable of doing everything. It's just not possible. You have to set limits for yourself. And so that's the thing. She says that, oh, well, if you start doing something nice for someone, you have to do something nice for everyone. You just can't do that. But doing one act of kindness is a good thing. So she tries to tell him that he has to, it's all or nothing, and that's not the case. But these people are so cruel to him. Meanwhile, the door breaks open and all the psychics start to get out, right? And I like that Dimple's like, okay, it worked because he's not concentrating his power out here. Dimple's like, he realizes Mogami is not using all of his power outside because he's focusing so much on Shigeo in this made-up world. And Dimple's like, okay, get in the door, y'all leave, right? He's like, bust out of here. Mm-hmm. And they're like, now we can get out. And meanwhile, Reagan's just like on his phone, like, I'm not leaving. They're like, call an ambulance. He's like, okay. And then Dimple's like, are you going to run away? Mob's done for. And he's like, why are you staying behind? He's like, because I trust in him. He's like, in this situation, are you really this stupid? And no, he trusts Mob. Reagan Arataka, you bold sir. And Dimple's like, really? And he's like, yeah, I am. And he says, this is probably the first time someone's placed so much trust in you too, right? And Dimple's like, he's like, Mob trusts us because he's stupid. I love it. And he's like, I've still got plenty of use for him. And considering that, running away is the last thing I want to do. And Dimple realizes, oh my God, we're exactly the same. As he's like, So basically Dimple and Reagan both technically have use for Mob, right? Although Reagan's is pretty innocent. Dimple's is a little less so. Have use for Mob. And Reagan's like, this is the first time that Mob's trusted you, right? It's okay. We just have to have faith in each other. And Dimple's like, oh God. He's like, what am I doing? He's like, well, I can't bring out Mob's powers on my own. And at this point, Dimple realizes, well, damn it, Reagan and I might be kind of the same. And I may need someone to help me bring out Mob's powers. And this guy seems like he trusts Mob. So it might be more effective to manipulate him from the shadows. Let's just do that. So Dimple basically says, fine. I've changed my mind. I'll stay behind as well. Again, the idea that people can change. That Dimple went from not wanting Reagan around at all and wanting to get rid of him and trying to convince Mob to not be around Reagan at all to realizing maybe I need Reagan so I can work in the shadows. So I guess I'll stay around and be friends with y'all. I guess. Like, right. So he's suddenly changed as well. And Reagan doesn't seem surprised. He's like, well, good. Well, then we'll wait this one out. And he's like, no, waiting's not going to bring Shigeo back. He's like, I'm going to take care of this myself. I like the idea that, again, Reagan is so trusting and has such a rose-tinted view of Mob that Dimple's like, nah, this is still a kid. We need to help him. I like that they balance each other out so well. Now I see why y'all ship Reagan and Dimple. I'm starting to see it. I'm starting to see the Reagan-Dimple ship. It's all making sense because they do balance each other out really well. But God. And then, of course, as the caterpillar, I like the idea that Mogami is the caterpillar, like, and he wants Mob to develop and crystallize and become this black butterfly, right? He's like, do you hate them? Do you despise them? They're a cancer to society. Stop letting them use you. You'll be reborn as my sympathizer, and I'll give you strength to make your negative emotions explode and used against the world. And it's really scary, like when Mob like erupts in that moment. And I was like, no! I was like, please don't. And meanwhile, Dimple's trying to like break through the barrier, and he's like, how did he get through this shield? How strong is Mob? But what's amazing is that he's not about to get through, and then something helps him. And he's like, oh, okay, my spiritual power increased. Awesome, this should work. And then Reigen's like, well, did it work? And then we see Matsuo. I'm so proud of Matsuo in this, right? We go with that idea of people can change. Matsuo helping. Matsuo, now in the end, Matsuo gets Mogami, which we'll talk about that, but Matsuo's like, you owe me one, which I feel like their debt's paid by him getting Mogami. Now that I've helped you, you better win this. I like that Matsuo realizes the direness of the situation like Dimple. He's like, no, we need Mob to win because Mogami is really, really powerful and this will be really bad otherwise. And so then what's great about this moment is that Mob, he tells her to apologize. He says, I want you to apologize. He doesn't want to kill her. He doesn't want to hurt her. He wants her to say she's sorry. And Mogami is like, make her disappear. But Mob is like, no. He wants her instead to apologize. And then she does. She says, I'm sorry. And that's when the guy hits him over the head. And he's like, what did I ever do to people? And so here's the thing. Mob has, at this point, he's still like, he's mad. He's mad because he's like, I didn't do anything to you all. Why are you being mean like this? Which, again, this is Mogami's crafted negative world that is not realistic for Mob. I mean, it might have been realistic for Mogami, but not for Mob. Mob's world is not like this. So, at first, he doesn't want to hurt anybody. He just wants them to stay away from him. But then, he gets mad when they hit him with the cinder block, and he's like, I can't think of a single thing that I've done wrong. But it doesn't matter. None of this matters. And so then, at this point, I was so frustrated because Mogami's like, you finally changed. It's complete. You're a lot like me. And that's why I didn't want you to travel the same path that I did. So, Mogami sees a lot of himself in Mob, but again, his world is not the same as Mob, and he wants Mob to be like him. It's like that parent that wants you to play a sport because they played it and they want to relive the glory days. It's kind of like that, right? And I was so worried for Mob. I'm like, please don't strangle this person. But then, thank God, Dimple shows up out of the booger in this guy's nose. And he's like, hey! And Mob's like, what? Seasoning realty. I love that in the mailbox. He's like, oh man, you're pretty far gone, aren't you? I love that Dimple's like, oh God, this guy's really got you in the spirit world, huh? Oh shit. He's like, do you know who I am? I love he looks kind of Dimple. And then, but here's the thing. Mob in this world, he forgot Reagan. He forgot Dimple. He forgot all the people that cared about him because Mogami made him forget them. And it's like, no. And Dimple's like, you baka. What are you doing? He's like, before that. And he's like, there he is. I love it. He's like, quit lurking. I love it. He's like, damn you for actually falling for these illusions. Yeah, Dimple sees right through it. He's like, fine. He's like, I'll have to use all my spiritual power I've stocked up, but time for some shock therapy. Oh, he just punches Mob. It's great. Knock some sense into him. He's like, remember, Shigeo, Reagan and I are waiting for you outside. Aww. He's like, Reagan, who's that? Which is, again, another thing where Reagan is such a huge positive influence on Mob's life that, yeah, I know that if he had remembered Dimple and Reagan from the start, it would not have, I don't think Kogami could have, or Mogami, I keep wanting to call him Kogami, I don't think he could have reached him the same way. And then his cell phone rings. The moment he remembers Reagan, his phone rings. He's like, oh, hey, can you hurry to the office? He's like, a huge job just came in. Your master needs your help. And he's like, master? And Dimple's like, yeah, stop using your powers for dumb things in this dumb world. I love it. He's like, don't you want to be a big brother your little brother can look up to? Yeah, so part of it is being a positive influence. Dimple's like, you got a brother that looks up to you. You got to be a good big brother. And then Mob looks down and realizes he's like, my little brother. And he realizes that he has Ritsu shoes on instead. Which, again, kind of makes sense because this whole dour world kind of connects back to Ritsu and his whole dilemma. Again, last season it was called Discord. That was a thing of Ritsu coming to terms with his emotions and his psychic powers and them developing. So now it's Mob's turn. Awesome. I love it. Don't let Mogami influence you like that. You managed to stick to your values when you fought Hanazawa. He's like, when you fought Teru, you managed to stick to your principles. And he's like, that's right. I'm not supposed to use these powers against other people. And he's like, not to mention, why are you losing easily to commoners? He's like, you bring shame to the Body Improvement Club. Where do those muscles you built up go to? And he's like, I don't know how much time you've spent in this dump, but this isn't like you. Do you want your beloved Tsubomi-chan to hate you? And that's when the flower sprouts on his head. And all the petals like blow away. And then Reagan's like, well done. I love that. And then we see Ritsu and Teru. He's like, Nissan, hey ya. I love that. I love just how he views Teru and Ritsu in his mind. And he looks up to Reagan. That's something impressive because in the vision, he looks up to see Reagan. He sees Ritsu and Teru on the same playing field. Oh my god. And then and he looks up to the Body Improvement Club that's like, fight on. Oh my gosh, I freaking love it. I love it so much. And then he bulks up. I love it. And Dimple's like, okay, that's going way too far. I love Dimple's face there. It's great. And so he kind of deflates. And he's like, oh, I'm kidding. He's like, thanks, Dimple. Aww. And then Mogami's like, what? Who cares if your memories came back? The 6 months are etched in your heart forever. And I love Dimple sitting there like, guy, can you shut up and leave him alone? Like, just let it go. He's like, I know you were hearing my voice subconsciously. And he's like, Mogami. And then Mob says, he's like, yeah, just like you said, the world can be a cruel and messed up place. But you helped me see it in a new light. And then Dimple's like, don't tell me you're going to go to the dark side. He's like, I'm truly blessed. And I need to be more thankful to everyone around me. So yeah, he realized that, yeah, the world can be really cruel. But so he should be thankful. He should be thankful for those that support him. Because, yeah, that's the thing. He's like, I should be thankful to those who support me because otherwise I could end up like you. And he's like, and I don't want that to happen. So I love that. He's like, once I get back to the real world. And then Mogami's like, oh, so that's how it's going to be. Well, and I thought I found a sympathizer, which is disappointing. And we see, like, I love that his hair flows the same way that Mobs does when he gets mad. And I love that we see him through the fingers. He's like, one other thing. People can change through interactions with others. I was able to change because of everyone. So yeah, people can change through others. He's like, it's not too late for you to change. I mean, even though you're a spirit. I mean, Dimple's already changed and he's been a spirit. He's like, I've been able to become a little stronger than if I had been alone. So yeah, he realizes that it's better to have friends. It's like friends means you're stronger than being alone. Which I feel is going to connect to Sho in some way later on, because Sho seems very much like a loner character. Like, Sho wants to be by himself, and Teru wanted to be by himself, but now Teru has found Mob. So I feel like Sho is eventually going to join the crew. I'm convinced, especially since his dad is the leader of Claw, and Sho seems to be like kind of like a rebel anyway. I feel like Sho is going to break away from his dad and join the crew. Just what I think. Just my thoughts. I could be wrong. It's like, if I'm able to change, then everyone else should be able to as well. That means no one is worthless. And so I like that Mogami tells him not to say anymore, right? Because he knows it's true, right? No one is worthless. And I feel like everything Mob says in this episode is going to be challenged, and he's going to have to reaffirm it the rest of the series. And I'm rooting for our boy Mob. I'm like, come on, you can do it, right? He's like, or you'll have hell to pay. And he's back to like his evil spirit. He's like, the Shigeo you fabricated might succumb to you, but I won't. I love it. I'm not going to run. Oh, I love it. I love it so much. I still have that awful Asagiri-san to save. And I love that he recognizes, like, yeah, she's terrible, but she's not worthless. If I can change, so can she. So let's do this. Oh my gosh, it's great. And then we start this. And then he's like, oh, okay, well, I guess that we're going to battle now. And the animation for this whole fight is absolutely incredible. And so we find out that Mogami is very nihilistic, right? And he tells Mob, he's like, life is worthless and painful and devoid of meaning. And Mob's like, that's not how this is. No. And so inside, he like swallows Mob whole, and Mob feels the screams of all these people dying and all these ghosts. And he's like, is this how they felt when they were alive? And he's like, oh my gosh. It's like, it is such a cruel world. And it's so sad because I hate seeing Mob with like the tears in his eyes, because he's like, these people all died, these horrible deaths. And he's like, maybe the world is bad, like Mogami said. But then he's like, am I really going to be able to do stuff? And then he hears the voice of the girl. He hears Asagiri saying, help me. And he's like, she says, help me. And he's like, that's right. I love when he grabs her hand. Like, the animation, God, it's like Bones just decided, they're like, here's our dump truck of money. We've got these other shows, but Mob. And then when he grabs her hand, he's like, I came here to save someone. And then it all just bursts, right? All the ghosts burst. I always thought these powers were of no use to anybody. And then we have the 100%. He's like, but I'll use them to save people. So Mob saying he wants to use his powers to save others. And I feel like that saving can have a number of different meanings. It could mean literally saving them. It could mean like mentally saving them. It could be changing their perspective to make them better people. I feel like you could do a lot with that in this series. But he's like, I'm going to use them to save people. And he goes 100%. And then Mogami's like, well, it doesn't matter. I'm going to destroy me. And sends all these spirits that he's collected. He's kind of like Matsuo in a way. He's collected all these spirits over the years. And I just love that Mob ends up like just breaking through all of them with his light. Like all this crystal. It's so beautiful. And just the explosions, everything. There's no way for me to put into words how amazing it is. And it just sparkles, right? And Dimple's like, Shigeo, you did it! And I love his hair is all flowing like Mogami's kind of, right? He's like, well, I'll be damned! And then all of the ghosts start to erupt and be set free. He's like, you're not the same boy from earlier. Who are you? Oh, it's so good! And I love that Dimple's like, do you finally get how freaky he is? I love it! But he's like, this is Kageyama Shigeo's true form that he reveals when he's mad. But no, it's not. It's different. Because he's like, it's dangerous, so leave this to me and stay back. I love it. I love it. He's just so different, right? He looks like a shonen protagonist. It's, oh my God. But yeah, because yeah, this is a different 100%. The 100% we've seen so far, with the exception of the one that he had when he was with Reagan, has been, you know, usually negative and he looks scary. But here his eyes are like crystal clear and everything. And Dimple's like, yeah, actually, who are you? I love it. I love Dimple just being like, as he's like getting gently pushed back. It's so good. And then he goes there to fight the spirits. And it's just an all-out animation fest. And just with his sparkly eyes and everything. Mob looks so different. It's crazy, right? And God, just the animation. I could sing about it all day. And all the spirits that he's collected are going to be freed at once. And so he has to try to stop them. I love the reds versus the green. Very Christmassy, right? Where you have Dimple there in the green and you have all the spirits in the red. And he's like, go back. He's like, head back, Dimple. You can get out. I'm just like, can't get over how great Mob looks in like 100% positive form. He's like, I'll be fine. And Dimple's like, you sure about that? And he seems like everything's okay. He's like, I'm going to save Asagiri-san. And so Dimple's like, okay, well, I'll get out of here. But it's, God, the animation. The animation on Mob as he's in 100% mode. The animation on all the spirits. Everything surrounding. And him saying, I have to exorcise them all. But it seems like it's too much for him, right? It seems like all of these, like he grows his arm back. He's like, no matter how much you struggle, your path will lead you to the same place as mine did, to ruin. And so he's like, you can't save everyone. You can't fight all of the spirits and destroy all of them. And I love when he tries to, it's like fighting back a spirit bomb at one point. Oh my gosh. They never let you get a really good close-up of his face like that, though, which is sad because I'm trying to find a good screenshot, and they don't let you find, like, a decent picture of him. And it's like, I'm trying to find a good one. There's one right there. But yeah, oh my gosh. But it's not really enough, and he ends up getting swallowed by it, right? By Mogami and all the spirits. So then what's left after that, he says, I'm going to save her. And they're all, like, going after him, and it's just this... Oh my god, it looks like Neon Genesis, if I'm being honest, where it like comes out and like tries to grip a hold of him. It looks like Neon Genesis. He's like, I can't go out like this. But that's when the other version of himself comes out. They say that basically Mob is like two sides of a coin, right? There's two sides of a coin. Two sides of the coin. What we hope we get is there's the 100% positive Mob that becomes like a B shonen protagonist, and then there is the question mark version. So there's two sides of the coin. There's the 100%, and we hope that it's the positive side, not the other emotions, or there's the question marks that are the unknown part of Mob. And this is where it gets a little confusing and tricky, and I don't want spoilers because I know we're going to find out more. That's part of the mystery of Mob Psycho. Amidst all of the humor, amidst all of the pain, amidst all the amazing animation, amidst everything in this episode, there's still an element of mystery with Mob in that form, because it seems like Mogami like gets Mob to his breaking point, but then there's the question mark percent, right? And it just erupts everything. And Mogami goes, oh. And he looks at him and goes, and it's like billowing smoke. He's like, I see. Your vessel has been shattered. And that's what's inside. Oh, and it's this, and it goes from being a black figure to like a white one. So there's something inside of Mob, right? So Mob could also be a vessel right now, which adds to the whole your life is your own theme, because I feel like there's something inside of Mob, this question mark, whether it's a spirit, whether it's something, whether it's like a deity power, something inside of him, and he's considered the vessel for it. But I feel like what the series is going to be doing with Mob is for Mob to realize that he's not a vessel. He is his own person. And whether he has this inside of him or not, because it's kind of like a representation of all of us. Like every human has the ability to be cruel and to use their resources for good or for evil. Like they have the ability, like any human has the ability to kill. It's just, do you spiritually, mentally, morally think that that's an okay thing to do? You probably shouldn't, but you know, that's the thing. We all are capable of doing horrible things, but our life is our own. We don't have to, it doesn't have to be that way. Kind of like the thing with Mogami. Yeah, you may be dealt a horrible hand, but it is in the end your choice how you deal with it. So you don't have to be the way Mogami is and live your life. You can do whatever you want. But I don't know, that figure, the white figure, and the world, like this, the entire galaxy around them, and we don't get what Mogami does with that. Mogami's like, so this is what's inside of you. Oh, I don't want to touch this. And then Mob wakes up. So again, there is that mystery. That mystery is surrounding what do we do with that form. I like Reagan's like, well, I thought you about died. So good. That took you ages. Yes, a very long time. And he asks how Asagiri is. And he's like, well, if you're awake, then she's probably okay. And then, yeah, I like that. And it goes right through Mob. I'm like, ugh. He's like, you've made your choice. And I'll keep watching from afar to see if you've made the right one. And I was about to be like, oh, is Mogami going to be this recurring villain that's really annoying? But I love at the very end, Matsuo was like, no, you're actually not going anywhere. It's like, nope, that was a trophy. That was unexpected. Thank you. And I like that Reagan's like, oh, I didn't even realize he was there. I love it. I love Matsuo's like, bye. Got my stuff. He's like, I'll take really good care of him. Uh-huh. I love it. So the question is Matsuo... Matsuo's been doing freelance psychic work now that he's disbanded from Claw. Is he going to go back to Claw? Is he going to keep doing his own thing? I like Matsuo. He has changed. Interesting. And that's when Asagiri wakes up. And Mob says, are you really always like that? Like you were in the dream? And she's like, yeah, I am. I'm sorry. And at first she just like pats him on the shoulder like, yeah, sorry, I am a jerk like that. Oh well. And Mob, we don't see his face. But then we hear her crying. Saying that she's actually very sorry. And then he's like, it's okay. He's like, I understand. In that moment he says, I understand about you. And Dimple's like, well, what? And he says that people can change. Mogami-san and Asagiri-san taught me that. For good or for better. The people around me changed as well. So now that I might be able to help, I know that I might be able to change others too. So I'm glad we were able to meet. And I like that. I like that he's like, you know, this wasn't a wasted experience. I learned a little bit more about the world. I learned the mental state of some people. And now I'm going to be able to go out and maybe have a positive influence on others. And yeah, and then she thanks them. She thanks Mob, and she joins his harem. She thanks Mob and joins his harem, and there we go. But I like that we've gone back to the aspect ratio is back to being normal now that Mob is out of that creepy dream world. So yeah, so anyway, what happens then is that the dad is in the hospital, and he sees this website with the psycho helmets, right? And she says that Mob is cool. And he's like, I did this research. It's like, psycho helmet religion. She's like, isn't that Mob? And we cut to the restaurant where the religious group is at. And they're like, our organizations are not going to survive on donations alone. They're like, it's going to be impossible to build a headquarters. And they're all like planning stuff out, looking at their charts, right? Not to mention our beloved founder is nowhere to be found. Okay, so their current balance is like 10,000 yen. Okay. Oh, and Psycho Hirometo says, thank you for your continued business with us. There has been a deposit of 500 million yen into your account. Oh my God. So he just gave him $500 million. 500 million yen. Oh my God. So they just got a huge contribution from the dad. Oh my God. For saving the daughter. Oh my God. Well, now Misato and the cult, it's going to get crazy. Oh my God. And so Reagan pops off at the end as the ED plays. Reagan pops off some wise knowledge here at the end because he didn't claim the reward. Mob's like, why didn't you claim the reward? And he's like, oh, well, look how many people got hurt. He's like, I don't call that a success. And he's like, you should never accept money that you feel you haven't earned. So yeah, so Reagan is like, Reagan did not take the reward. And he has like the really honest, like, you know, mentor excuse of like, you shouldn't take money that you didn't earn. And there's too many people hurt. It wouldn't be right for me to have taken the money, right? And I love that Dimple comes back. He's like, well, if you start taking money that way, you'll start always taking the easy way out, Mob, and you shouldn't do that. I love as he's saying where he has his Mob Donald's bacon cheeseburger and his fries. And I love that Dimple's like, you just don't want to be held responsible. Dimple's like, I love that again, Reagan has the idealistic, optimistic, good mentor speech, pep talk, motivational speaking, and Dimple's the realist. It's like, you just didn't want to get held responsible for all the injuries, because if you took the money, you'd bear some responsibility. He's like, that's not it, you moron. But then he says, no good ever comes out of drowning in wealth or power. Mogami let his own power swallow him up too. You know, Yeah, so I love that Reagan says, he's like, wealth and fame and power can swallow you whole. Yeah. He's like, nothing ever good comes out of being too wealthy, too famous, or too powerful. He's like, you're better off working part-time for me than becoming famous or powerful. Which is, it's so self-serving for Reagan because he is a con man. And he's like, well, Mob, he's like, you just better off just working for me part-time. But he's not wrong. That's the crazy thing. He spouts off this con man jargon, but then it's like, he's actually not wrong. Yeah. It's like, I feel like this is a big setup, right? Because Reagan is going to have to come to terms. I feel like this is setting things up for the rest of the season, oddly enough, because you've just had the religious cult that wants Mob to be their ruler. You've just had them get a giant donation of money. So they're going to try to find Mob and convince him to like join their cult. Then you have Reagan being like, don't become too famous or powerful now. And you have these other psychics figuring out about Mob. So it's like, and now Matsuo knows, so he's going to spread the word. So yeah, I feel like there's going to be this big push and pull between Reagan just wanting Mob to be a simple part-time worker at his crummy psychic agency and Mob like being a deity or the leader of a massive religious organization. What do we do? So yeah, and Dimple's like, give me a freaking break. I love Dimple sees right through it. It's great. But yeah, but Mob's like, oh, and he just slurps the rest of the Mob Donalds. Oh my God. And that's the episode. And then it goes into like the preview. Oh my God, guys. This episode, I've said it several times in this series. I've been like, oh, that's my favorite episode. That's my favorite episode. That's my favorite episode. At least for this season, this is my favorite episode for sure. It's going to be hard to compete with episode 11. Episode 11 of last season with Reagan was chef's kiss, as was episode 12. But this is like top 3 for sure. But there's been so many good episodes too. There's ones with Teru. The season's so good. At the end of this series, when I have to rank the episodes, it's going to be like, how do you even start? So this episode was definitely my favorite of this season so far, but we're not even halfway through. Not yet. Next week we will be. So I'm super excited to see what's going to happen. I'll probably be keeping the Christmas theme up for the next 2 weeks because on YouTube, episode 6 will come out on Christmas Day, and on Patreon, episode 7 will come out on Christmas Day. So fun times. But yeah, I'm so excited. But y'all, I hope you all enjoyed this reaction discussion. I'm very curious to note your comments down below. Please, no spoilers, hints, or clues. It's going to be a fun season. But I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I'll be back next week with episode 6 of Mob Psycho Season 2. Bye.